Hi everybody, and welcome to this video on making the most of the space you have when using the pen feature in Notability. So let's navigate into Notability. I'm going to use an Algebra 1 final exam review guide as an example today. And while our discussion right now is going to be focused around a math problem, this pertains to any subject and any Notability file you might be working with. So when we're using the pen feature, one big difference between using a stylus and an iPad and a pencil and paper is with a pencil and paper, you can write and draw only millimeters tall and millimeters wide, and your handwriting can be relatively neat. With a stylus and an iPad, we really don't have that luxury. We don't have the ability to write very neatly and very small at the same time. For me, in order to write neatly, I need to write quite large on the iPad screen. If I'm going to write my name nicely, well, for me, that's good handwriting. It takes up, maybe 20% of the whole width of the iPad. And we are really limited by how wide our iPad is, and it's only a matter of inches. So this video is all about making the most of the space. How do we keep our handwriting neat, but also get enough text on our page so that we can fill it with the appropriate amount of content, and especially in the appropriate places. And there are a couple of ways to do this, and I'm going to start with the way that I like to use the most. The way I like to use the most is simply to use two fingers and zoom way in very frequently. So if you see right now, I could certainly write some math problems, but immediately I can tell that there's no way I'm going to be able to do this in such a way that is going to be small enough to kind of fit appropriately in this problem solving area. So what I tend to do is zoom way in, so very far in, and I adjust the thickness of my pen appropriately. Because we are so zoomed in, we need our pen thickness to be really small for it to be an appropriate thickness at this zoom level. So I usually pick something really small, like maybe even that. And now I'm going to try to do this part of the problem. And so now I've gone ahead and finished this part of the problem, and you see that it looks totally appropriately sized right now. Of course, if I zoom out, you can see that, wow, that didn't take up much space at all, and it's very neat and orderly, and that was all because I zoomed so far in. And while this pen thickness that I'm on right now seems very thin at this zoom level, when we're zoomed in, it seems totally appropriate. Yes, are you going to have to scroll to the right and left frequently in order to make your way along a line while writing? Yes, but that is my favorite way to get the appropriate amount of writing in the appropriate amount of space, just by taking two fingers, zooming way in, and making sure that my pen feature is on an appropriate thickness, which is a lot thinner when you're that zoomed in. Another option for how to write and make the most of the space. I'm going to zoom out again. So now we're at kind of normal zoom level, if you will. In the bottom right-hand corner, you see this magnifying glass with some scribbles on it. And if I press that, what it will do is it will create a small magnified portion of the screen up here in your normal viewing area. And down here below, this is where you're going to be able to write using the pen feature. I mean, there's your pen right there. And you're going to be able to write large down here and have it show up small and appropriately sized up here. Note that in this magnified portion up top, there's this little black corner here, and if I click and drag on that, I can increase the size of this rectangle on my screen. So note that on the screen up here, I have the magnified portion, and down here, this is where I'm going to write. You can also click anywhere inside of this rectangle and move it so you can change where you are looking. Now, I will say this is less helpful for math problems, and I'll tell you why. Because note that I'm going to do the first step of this inequality on the left, right? This one right here. If I add 13 to both sides of this inequality, I'm ready to go to the next line. And since I like to delineate my steps vertically, when I go to the next line, I can't see the original problem anymore. So for math and any place where you're going to be writing vertically, this is not nearly as helpful, in my opinion, as the slightly zooming in feature with your two fingers. However, I will say there is a time when this can be a little bit more helpful. I'm simply going to do some writing here. I'm simply going to write horizontally, and I want to show you something. Note on the very right-hand side of this area down here is this little green sliver and this little bar with 3 dashes on it. And if I click that bar with 3 dashes, I'm actually going to drag out that little green part just a little bit. And I'll show you why in a moment. So I'm going to start writing some things. I'm going to say, this is and note that my handwriting is very large up here, but quite small up there, which is great. This is a screencast. And when I write screen, if you stop writing anywhere in that green portion, it immediately slides to the right to allow you to keep on writing. So if you think you're going to be using the pen feature and writing horizontally, this strategy might be better. So a screencast about writing in Notability. And so that is another way by which you can zoom in and write comfortably with your hands and a stylus on the iPad screen, but have the text show up nice and small on your Notability file so that you can actually write a significant amount of material or fit the text in a small spot or whatever it may be. And a few last things about this feature. Note that we have 3 buttons over here on the toolbar on the right. The left button will allow you to scroll left along your screen horizontally in case you want to go and edit something from before. The right button will allow you to scroll to the right in case you want to do that for any reason. This return button, not surprisingly, will allow you to return to a new line so you can start writing again. If ever you want to get out of this feature, you can press the magnifying lens again, and now you're out of it. You're back into your normal zoom. And one last feature that I'd like to show you about is the wrist guard. So suppose that you are writing in Notability and you are using neither of these 2 zooming features that we've just talked about, and you are simply writing with your hand. You can imagine that the bottom of your palm or your wrist might accidentally touch the screen as you're writing with the pen. And when that happens, suppose you are writing something and you say this is my wrist just touched the screen there, and it kind of messed me up while I was writing it. It kind of stopped me dead in my tracks, and that can be very annoying. So one thing you can do is in the bottom right you have this little hand symbol, and if you press that hand symbol, it creates this little bar on the bottom, and by dragging these 3 bars on the right, you can make that area larger or smaller. And what that's called is kind of like a wrist guard area. So it means that if you are writing and your wrist happens to accidentally touch in that gray area, it's fine. It's going to disregard that touch and it's going to let you keep on writing and not interrupt you. So one other way to help you make the most of the pen feature.